Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. It's Tuesday, time to talk about some new releases coming out this Friday, April 11th. I know it's the day before Record Store Day, and the new release list tends to be pretty light that day, but there's almost 400 albums coming out this week. I got 10 on my list for today. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. Like I said in the intro, there's almost 400 albums coming out this week, but I only got 10 of them on the show today. So if something you're looking forward to I don't have on here, make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to grabbing this week. And like always, if you're unable to find these in your local brick and mortar stores, they should all be available online. I'll put links down below in the comment section for them. You can also go over to the Vinyl Den store on Amazon. I've got all the pre-orders on there, new releases, there's deals on records, all sorts of cool stuff to check out. So I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that have been saving up for Record Store Day, but there's actually some cool stuff coming out the day before also. The first one is one I've been excited for ever since it was announced. I think it's the only one I've got on pre-order so far this week. This is the reissue of Siamese Dream by Smashing Pumpkins. Came out back in 1993. It was their second studio album because technically Pisces is Scary is a compilation, so it's not actually considered a studio album. But there's two different versions of this going to be available. There's a black version. There's going to be a red version. I think the red version is an indie exclusive. It's a 2 LP release. It's got right about $38. So the thing I'm really excited for about this release is this is the first time this album is being reissued since, I think it was 1994. Yeah, it was 1994 was the last time this album was reissued or released with the original album artwork on there. So the first time the album was reissued was in 2011. And with that pressing and every pressing since, they've had this alternate artwork on there. And it looks okay, but it's always kind of bothered me that it wasn't the artwork that was, on the original cassette that I had back in the 90s. So even though I've got the reissue that came out a few years ago, I've got this one on pre-order. In my opinion, this is one of the best and most influential albums of the early part of the 90s. This album really cemented the Smashing Pumpkins as one of the biggest bands of the 90s. It would hit number 10 on the Billboard 200. It would sell, I think, 4 million copies here in the U.S. Overall, I think Melancholy is probably a better album, but Siamese Dream and Melancholy I think are really neck and neck for me for which one is the best album from the band. But like I said, I'm looking forward to getting a copy of that this week. You've also got Jimmy Page and the Black Crowes Live at the Greek coming out. This came out back in 2000. This is a 6 LP box set. This is the expanded edition. So back a couple of weeks ago, they released a 2 LP version of this. It was basically like a compilation of the best tracks off this box set. Not really sure what the delay was between the 2 LP release and this box set. This is going to be about $120 online. All the tracks on this are all newly remastered. 16 of the 32 songs on here are unreleased also. So this was all recorded over 2 nights in October 1999 at the Greek Theater in LA. But because of licensing issues, when this album first came out, all of the Black Crowes songs were omitted from it. So in this expanded edition, you're getting all those songs, plus you're getting some additional Led Zeppelin songs. This is a really good performance. I've read nothing but great reviews about the 2 LP release. I'm sure this box set is going to be just as good. It should all be available on streaming, so I'll stream it all and check it out. There's also a couple of Bob Dylan's early albums coming out this week. The first one is his debut album from 1962. It's going about $22 online. This is the mono version of that album. But this is the album that kicked off one of the greatest careers in music history. But when it came out, it kind of largely went unnoticed. It wasn't until a couple of years later, I think it was like 3 years that it took for the album to finally chart. It hit like number 12, I think, on the UK albums charts. But those first couple of Bob Dylan albums were mostly covers. There's only 2 original tracks on this one, which is Talkin' New York and Song to Woody, and then the rest of them are all just folk standards. When it comes to Bob's early music, I don't have a lot of them on vinyl. I think I've only got 2 of his albums from the 60s. I probably should grab a copy of that this week. Then you've also got The Times They Are a-Changin. So this came out back in 64. It was his 3rd studio album. Same thing. It's mono release. It's going to run you about $22. This is the album that really made Bob Dylan, I think, one of the biggest musicians in music. This is Bob's first album to have all original music on there. And it's a very different album than his first couple of albums because it didn't have the humor that his first albums had. It was kind of a darker album. I think the lyrics on the album were definitely geared more towards the political upheaval that was going on in the U.S. around that time in the 60s. But the album would hit number 20 on the Billboard 200. It would go on to be one of the most influential albums of its time It's a great album. It's one I have it on CD. It's why I haven't bought it on vinyl. I probably should grab a copy of that one also this week. There's also a couple of reissues from LL Cool J coming out this week. The first one is All World Greatest Hits. Came out back in 1996, so this is a compilation of all the best tracks from across the first decade of music from him. So this is all stuff from 85 to 95. It's a 2 LP release. It's going to run you about $33. There's 16 songs on here. It includes all the biggest tracks that made him one of the bigger musicians of the later part of the 80s and early part of the 90s. It would hit number 29 on the Billboard 200. It ended up going platinum. This is the first time this album has been reissued since it was first released back in 1996. And this is one of those albums where it's kind of strange to me that it's gone, almost 30 years without being reissued, but it's finally getting reissued this week. Then you've also got Phenomenon getting reissued. Came out back in 1997. It was a 7 studio album. It's also 2 LP release. It's also going about $33. So by the time this album came out in 97, hip-hop had really evolved. And LL's music was evolving with it. It really started on Mr. Smith, which came out in 95, to this shift more towards this like modern hip-hop sound. And this album really, I think, completed that shift. The executive producer on this album was Sean Combs, and he used his roster of producers known as the Hitmen on this one. Commercially it did really well. I mean, it was a big album commercially, but critics were not big fans of it. They got a lot of really mixed reviews. Going back and listening to this album, it's been a long time since I listened to it. I just streamed it probably within the last, maybe 4 or 5 days. It's a good album. It's probably not one I need to have on vinyl, though. We've also got the new album from the Spin Doctors coming out this week. This is Face Full of Cake. It's their 7th studio album. It's going to run about $33. So this is the band's first album in 12 years. Their last album was If the River Was Whiskey. Came out in 2013. And with this new album, the band's trying to go back to this earlier sound that they had in the 90s. More of a straightforward alternative rock sound. I don't think they're ever going to be able to capture or recapture the magic that they had on their debut album. But they've released some good music over the years. Even as their style has changed, there's always some good songs on that one. They've already released 3 of the 12 songs off this one as singles. And I have to admit, they're actually pretty good songs. So, it's definitely one I'll add to my list to stream this week. You've also got a reissue of Hello Rockview by Less Than Jake coming out. Came out back in 1998. It was their 3rd studio album. It's going to be on black vinyl. It's going to be about $26. So in 2023, the band released a 25th anniversary deluxe edition of this album. It was on 2 LPs. It came with a bunch of demos and some live material. That is not what this release is. This is just the 1 LP standard release of this one. And this album was very expensive. If you wanted, before it was reissued in 2023, it was going to cost you well over $100 to get a copy of it. It's one of my favorite albums, or one of my favorite ska albums of the 90s. The thing is with this album, ever since the first time I listened to this album, something, I shouldn't say it sounded off, but there was just something about this album that just kind of caught my ear. And even though I love the album, it's one of my, like I said, it's one of my favorite ska albums of the 90s. I saw Less Than Jake on this tour. It was just something about the horns. And then I was listening to an interview a couple of years ago with the producer, and he was talking about how this is right around the time that Pro Tools was getting really big. And they were going through and they were messing with like the auto-tune on there. And they overly used auto-tune on the horns. And that's what it is. Going back and listen to this album, the horns just sound too perfect on here, especially when you compare that to like Losing Streak or Pezcore, some of the albums that came out before this one. But, I still love the album. It's a good one to pick up if you're unfamiliar with it. There's also a new album from Onyx coming out this week. This is Lower East Side. It's their 14th studio album. It's going to run you about $28. To be honest, I had no clue that Onyx was even releasing music still, let alone, I think they've released like 6 albums since 2021. I think it was 2022 where they released 3 albums alone in that year. So I had no clue they were still making music. Of course, the band is known for their debut album from '93, Back the Fuck Up. That was the song. That was the album that had Slam on there, which is their big single. I guess you can call them one of those 90s one-hit wonder bands, but, I've got to go back through and listen to their music. I've got to listen to this album. They're no longer a 4-piece. They're just a duo now at this point. And from what I understand, they're trying to get back to their, like, more gritty roots that they had earlier in their career. I don't know. I was never a huge fan of Onyx. Like I said, I had that on CD back in the day, but it's something I definitely need to go back through and not only revisit that, but kind of go through their career also. So you got that one coming out this week. Then the last album I got on my list this week is a reissue of Heritage by Opeth. Came out back in 2011. It was their 10th studio album. It's going about $40. Of course, Opeth is known as one of the biggest progressive metal bands of the last 30 years, but this album was the big transition for them. Prior to this album, they're more like a progressive death metal. where this album was definitely more like a just kind of straightforward progressive metal. And I really worked on this album because it ended up being their highest charting album here in the US. So it hit number 19 on the Billboard 200. And if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know I've really struggled with the metal genre, especially progressive metal, over the years. It's probably 3 or 4 years ago that I listened to Still Life, which is the only album from Opeth that I've ever listened to. There's some really good stuff on there. It's another one of those bands I need to go back through and listen to more of their material. So I'll add this one to my list to stream and check out this week. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to grabbing this week. You know, like I said, I've already got that Siamese Dream on pre-order. I'll stream the new Spin Doctors album. I'll stream that new Onyx album. We'll see what else I end up grabbing. Like I said, it's the day before record store day. My local record store does a 15% off sale, so maybe I'll grab a couple of these albums along with my RSD titles on Saturday, but we'll see what I end up grabbing. Let me know what you guys are looking forward to. Like always, if you've enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.